Good evening. Welcome to the September 18th Village Board meeting. We'll begin with the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag, United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
And I'm delighted that this evening we're going to begin with a special presentation in honor of Constitution Week. I could be joined by a couple of representatives from DAR. Thank you very much. I'll just stand right up here. I'm going to read the proclamation. I don't always read them in their entirety, but this one has some real substance in it that I think would be valuable information for us all. So, whereas September 17th, 2019 marks the 232nd anniversary of the drafting of the Constitution by the Constitutional Convention, and whereas it is fitting and proper to accord official recognition to this magnificent document and its memorable anniversary and to patriotic celebrations which will commemorate this occasion, and whereas Public Law 915 guarantees the issuing of a proclamation each year by the President of the United States designating September 17th through 23rd as Constitution Week here in our United States of America, and whereas we honor our founders for recognizing the need to have such a critical document establishing a basis for how our great nation would operate while honoring and protecting its people. And whereas we urge all to affirm the ideals of the framers of the Constitution that the framers of the Constitution had in 1787 by vigilantly protecting the freedoms guaranteed to us through the guardian of our liberties, remembering that lost rights may never be regained. Now, therefore, I, Victoria Garrity, Mayor of the Village of Ossining, on behalf of the Board of Trustees, do hereby support the efforts of the Mohegan chapter of the Daughters of the American Revolution as we recognize September 17th through 23rd, 2019 as Constitution Week, and thank them for bringing this to our attention as we give proper remembrance of this significant document on which our great democracy is based. We ask all our residents and merchants to join us in acknowledging the importance of our Constitution. And I'd like to invite Susan. Actually, Susan, you're my neighbor, and I don't remember your last name.
Suzanne. And Lael Burns.
I'm Lael Burns.
So Suzanne and Lael Burns from the Daughters of the American Revolution. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Would you like to expand on anything that I just shared?
I sure would. All right. Okay. Thank you so much. Daughters of the American Revolution is a nonprofit, non-political women's volunteer service organization dedicated to promoting patriotism, historic preservation, and securing the future of America through the better education for children. That's the little spiel that I've memorized. The Mohegan chapter was founded in Ossining in 1894. We just celebrated our 125th chapter anniversary last June. We have about 75 members who live in Ossining and northern Westchester County. There are several other DAR chapters in Westchester. And if you want to know more about DAR and our mission, go to dar.org. We're very eager to gain more members as we approach the 225th anniversary of our nation's founding in 2026, coming up very soon. We've got to push for members. But it's a very worthwhile organization, and it's been terrific. Now, Constitution Week. My notes. In 1955, the National Society, Daughters of the American Revolution, petitioned Congress with a resolution, and this week of observance for the foundation of the American form of government was signed into law by President Dwight D. Eisenhower on August 2nd, 1956. George W. Bush officially declared the inception of Constitution Week in 2002. The commitment of the DAR is to encourage, study, and educate the public about the Constitution, which was adopted by the American Congress of the Confederation on September 17, 1787. I'm skipping forward. The Constitution is a living document that assures each citizen of the freedoms Americans cherish and appreciate. As members of the Daughters of the American Revolution, It is our responsibility to keep our ancestors' legacy alive by promoting the ideals they fought valiantly to give their descendants. Thank you so much.
Thank you for bringing this to our attention. We're delighted to be able to honor the Constitution in this way. Thank you, Lael. All righty. Thank you. Oh, yes, let's take a Yes. I'll send it to you, Susan. Okay. Thanks, Tom. All right. Madam Clerk?
We're going to have a public hearing in the matters of the Housing Choice Voucher Program, Section 8 5-year plan.
Corporation Counsel, do you want to give us any background on this? I know we've discussed it in a variety of forms.
Yes, Mayor. This is the renewal of the 5-year plan for the village's public housing agency program through the Section 8 office. It will be effective January 1, 2020 through December 31, 2024. We have already gotten sign-offs from the county with regard to certification that the plan is consistent with the consolidated plan for Westchester County. And this public hearing is required pursuant to federal law. This was noticed previously. The notice for the hearing and the plan itself were available at both the clerk's office, at the recreation center, and at the library. I had received communication from our Section 8 Director, Marilyn Geraldo, at the end of last week that no new communications or no communications had been received with regard to this. I confirmed with the clerk's office today that they had not received anything further with regard to it, but we do have the public hearing on tonight. The documents that relate to the 5-year plan must be filed with the county by the end of this month, and then, as I said, the plan will become effective on January 1 of 2020. Not seeing anyone, could we have who wants to come up? We have a motion to close the public hearing.
Moved.
Comments on the board?
The only comment I have with respect to the plan, having had a chance to look at it, is I would ask that our Section 8 manager would think about modifying the plan slightly to include actually doing a housing needs assessment specs to the needs that are in Ossining. I haven't had a chance to look at some other 5-year plans within the county. There is at least some data being provided to outline some of the housing needs and where the struggles are with finding housing here in the village of Ossining. We've spent an extensive amount of money the last few years of trying to figure out what housing needs are and everything like that. And I think that the Section 8 office that we have here in Ossining has the data. They know some of the most hardest. They know which families have the hardest time actually finding housing. So I would like for the plan to be amended to include that going forward within the 5 years.
I'll bring it to Ms. Geraldo's attention. I'm not sure, since this was already submitted to the county, I'm not sure if the plan itself can be modified at this point, since this is the plan that the county has signed off on. But I'll certainly make her aware of the issue that you have raised. Absolutely.
I ask, what are we voting on, though? Are we voting to close the public?
It would be, well, the motion is to close the public.
Okay.
There was a motion to close the public
Okay.
hearing. There'll be a motion later in the agenda to approve the 5-year plan,
Got
so
it.
the documents can
I
then be
see.
filed.
I see.
Stuart, if we had people from the public address the board regarding the plan, even though it was already submitted to the county, how would their input be noted?
I'm not sure I understand.
So Trustee Bazemore just gave a suggestion to the plan, but I understand that it was already submitted to the county, but our public hearing was still open. So at what point does the feedback time expire for us to submit it to the county? I guess that's my question.
I understand that the documents must be submitted to the county by September 30.
Okay.
And since I know that next week is not a legislative session, this would be the meeting to, present a resolution to approve the plan to then
On time.
get it filed.
Okay.
Correct. So, but I would think, Trustee Herrera, in response to your question, if someone had something that they wanted to submit to the Section 8 office, they can go onto the website, submit. If they want to fax it or get in contact, they could do that as well.
Okay.
But September 30th is the filing date with the county.
Got it. Thank you.
So we're voting now to
Close
close
the
the
public
public
hearing.
hearing. Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Are you comfortable closing the public hearing?
Moving on to mayor's and trustees announcements.
I don't know, we started this in an unusual way. I don't know that we ever even took a roll call. That's something we have.
We didn't take the attendance now.
Okay. Would we have normally by now?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we can take it now. Okay, yeah.
I feel like we usually do right away, but we did so many other things
Yeah,
today.
okay. Trustee Bazemore?
Here.
Trustee Quesada?
Present.
Trustee Levin?
Present.
Trustee Herrera?
Present.
And Mayor Garrity?
Present.
Okay, so now on to mayor's and trustees announcements.
Does anybody have any announcements for this evening?
Yes, I will start off with two announcements, and then I actually have a personal statement I'd like to share. So the first two quick announcements are the Westchester County Department of Human Services and Healthcare fields will be hosting a job fair. It's for all county residents, and the job fair is going to be held on Thursday, October 3rd from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the Westchester County Center Little Theater. That's upstairs as you go into the building. And what's great about this is that there's going to be on-site interviews. So you can meet with more than 24 county human services and not-for-profits. And according to this county flyer, they have 500 employment vacancies. So that's on Thursday, October 3rd, 10 to 2 at the Westchester County Center. And the next announcement is the center at Mariondale will be hosting their annual Tree Huggers Ball. That's going to be this Sunday, September 22nd, 2019, from 4:30 to 7 p.m. For those who haven't been, it's a beautiful event, beautiful grounds, and talk about a fierce group of people that really work on social change, injustice issues, environmental activism. They're going to be featuring live music, seasonal foods, local wine, beer, ciders, and having a couple more events throughout the night that are free. The event, though, is ticketed. That's mariondale.org /treehuggers 2019. So that's that. And now I have just a personal statement I'd like to read. This year will mark my 12th year in public and civic service at the Ossining. Start over. This year will mark my 12th year in public and civic service at the local level, which is right here in Ossining. The county, which I did 5 years at the County Board of Legislators on and off, and at the state level at the office of Governor Andrew M. Cuomo. And now close to 3 years elected here locally. It's remarkable how much can be accomplished in little over a decade, and it's been a privilege to serve my community. I've heard a lot and read a lot about who people think I am or what they think my overall motivations are. I would like to speak for myself. As a Latino child from low-income immigrant family here in Ossining, the terms equity, justice, faith, and human dignity have been and still are at the core of who I am and my overall life. I marched for immigration reform when I was 12 here in Ossining with thousands of Ossining students and families and residents to rise up against unjust decisions at the federal level and even right here at our school during my stay at our middle school. In 2010, when I was 20, I stood up to power again here in my hometown as an employee regarding how our village summer camps were operated and managed. And in 2014, at the age of 24, I ran for public office, becoming the county's youngest elected official. Some say my tenure has been controversial. It is true that I have tackled challenging and pressing issues, which oftentimes are controversial. Issues and topics such as discrimination and racism and real divides in our community, the continued fight for fair and affordable housing, homelessness, immigration reform, enforcement, and our overall role here locally, nepotism and cronyism at the local level, process, and our list goes on. There have been tensions and many clashes amongst each other, partially based on the attractable local government culture, but these issues are too important to turn away from. It has been said in this room and throughout the community that there are things about me, if revealed, could totally derail my ability to be elected in the future. Many, including some in powerful overall positions right here in the village, have threatened to release information regarding an embarrassing moment in my life about 10 years ago. So I'll set the record straight here. When I was just about to turn 21, I was struggling financially, I'm not gonna lie. I was trying to pay for my apartment, I put myself through college, I was working full time, and as I was in the process of juggling all that, I dropped the ball. My car was repossessed, and I continued to struggle with my overall finances until I graduated. It was such a hard moment for me, but I've been able to rebuild myself and overall life ever since. It's puzzling to me why anyone would want to threaten me due to past economic hardships or overall any hardship, but threatened I was. More than that, the main reason which prompted this entire statement, I never thought that in 2019 I would have people in positions of power attempt to exert power and leverage over me, personally, professionally, and politically, and use the threat against me. I never thought that in 2019 my sexuality and being gay would be used against me. I never imagined being called homophobic and also being called a fake Christian because of my principles and my efforts and work for equity, equality, and human rights for all. The hypocrisy, which totally throws me off to this very day. I'm speaking out today because no one should ever fear to be threatened, directly or indirectly. Good leaders do not seek to control or dominate. Community members should not stoop to such levels. Threatening elected officials is especially egregious and totally unacceptable. This type of behavior is not okay and should not be okay with you, the public. It should never be wrong to be who you are, and we should never have to feel ashamed of our personal story. At a time of increased hate and division and inequity, even right here in our village of Ossining, I believe it's important, now more than ever, to speak up against these behaviors and tactics. I hope that my story helps someone today. I hope that my story causes our community to ask deeper questions about who we are, and I hope that by sacrificing my private information, I will help to make a change for the better going forward. Thank you all for listening, and God bless. I chose today to share this because I was a little fed up and frustrated with what I had been going through the past couple of months, now almost half a year, but also on a good note because Hispanic Heritage Month had begun, and the Human Rights Campaign at the national level has totally revamped what this month means, and it is now known nationally as Latinx Heritage Month, to really acknowledge the culture, the resilience, and the contributions for everyone, and not putting everyone in a box, and really being as inclusive as possible. So I thank you for your time, and hopefully we could learn as a community that no matter who you are or where you serve, and wherever you are a leader or a person of influence, that it is never okay to exert your power indirectly or directly, especially in a community that thrives and strives to call itself diverse and progressive. Thank you.
Anybody else have comments at this stage?
Comments or announcements?
Announcements would be great.
So, seems like a while ago, but on Friday, I think there were probably, I'm going to say over 55 people at a really wonderful community gathering at the high school library. It's we've discussed this program before. We've gotten the green light from a group from Cornell, graduate students, professor, who are doing environmental resilience study, and they were looking for input from the community. The community is just a phenomenal outpouring. It was a data gathering day, and it included a number of high school students. We were the only village that applied, or town, for this grant that actually included diverse high school students. It was the environmental club, and I'm not sure I got the word club right, but it was the high school students, and it was graduate students from Cornell that participated, a couple of whom actually are originally from Ossining. I would say virtually every group was present that had something to do with the waterfront. So town, village, the folks that own Westerly Marina, Shadamat, Ossining Bone Canoe Club. Somebody was there from Sing Sing because of the danger of rising water and how one has an escape route for really some of the most vulnerable people in our community, who are all located in Sing Sing, and what happens to that community. Really amazing conversations, 3 hours, 4 hours, excuse me, and there'll be a part 2, a part 3. They are collecting data about all the environmental issues, lots of discussions about the water drainage coming from uphill down to our water, the aqueducts, the systems, and look, for those of us that are involved in environmental issues, I don't think anybody questions the fact that there's a danger in the Hudson, like many bodies of water, rising at a rather rapid rate, causing tremendous damage to communities, and how one builds resilience to that, and how one affects the environment, and what we can do as a community. So there will be more meetings. The students from Cornell and the students from Ossining High School are key players in it. The town, the village will be, and they're gathering more and more data. The next steps is to reach out to the community. I'm using my words now, not theirs, but you know, you go fishing where the fish are. So their next step is, how do you get into churches, synagogues, the community center? Public parks has been successful in some communities up the Hudson. In just having meetings in public parks with people that are involved with waterfront and all the issues of the water. All sorts of topics were discussed. I am going to get the deck from that. I have not received it yet, but there's certainly lots of people that were there. And the environmental folks. We have a town and a village environmental council. I'm a liaison to the one in the village. They came so well prepared. They went right through all their questions and commentary. So it was a pretty proud moment, actually, to be part of this community that represents people of so many ages and so many backgrounds, and so many thoughtful people with ideas about how to make this community really thrive over the next 100 years. That was sort of my recap. I don't know if anybody really wants to hear more about it. It was just sort of fun. The other thing is, I wanted to mention, as a liaison to the EAC, that they are working on a green space study. I just was hoping to come in today with a date on that, but I don't have one. And as a liaison to Parks and Rec, I know it's not the official name, but I don't care. I love the show. I'm going to keep calling it Park and Rec. You know, I've spoken about this group before. It represents a village and town. There are liaisons. Every person has decided to raise their hand and become somewhat of an advocate for every park in the community, with bringing forth their ideas about how they want each park to look going forward. And then we're going to all get together and sort of present where, you know, what we'd like to see in some of the parks, and more in depth, rather than waiting for consultants or volunteers or anything like that. It came up into me. It's like a vision statement for the parks. Corny as it sounds, I've got to tell you, it was brought forth by someone at the meeting, and it's another project that they're doing, and they are going to come and present an update, as they're supposed to do once a year. I don't have a date for that either, not yet, but Stuart, you always help me with the AC, but with the Parks and Rec, they're going to present to the town board, and they're going to present to the village board. I personally believe that the community center is one of the most open and important assets of this community. It is the one place where everybody can and should and does come together. And the more we can do to enhance all of its offerings, the better off I think this community will be. So I'm excited that there is a group of people that's taking it very seriously. That is sort of my updates on my two groups and about that Cornell project.
Anybody else with announcements?
I just have a comment. Knowledge. Trustee Herrera, you just made an announcement to the public about some of the most intimate details of your life. And first, I want to let you know that I hear you. I'm actually frustrated that such announcement was even necessary. Frustrated is not even the word. I'm actually disgusted that such an announcement would have to be made, particularly about someone's financial situation. Even more personal is, who people choose to love and have who people choose to love. As an elected official, we every last one of us, we come to these meetings week after week, and we dedicate enormous amounts of time. And I believe we all do it to some degree because we deeply care about this community. It's not the money. The money does not won't pay the bills. And there's always this idea that when you're in public service that you're opening your life up to the public. But that being said, under no circumstances, at least for me, under no circumstances would I ever thought that someone would have to reveal intimate details because community members choose to come to meetings and to basically indicate that there are matters that can end someone's political career. I don't. In fact, I'll mention the community member. A couple of weeks ago, when we were talking about a resolution, there was a community member by the name of Laura Whitlinger, and she came to this office, and in her comment, she had mentioned that the mayor was benevolent and not releasing a dossier. I just want to say to that if this is the two things that you and your campaign had on Trustee Herrera, by all means, that does not show how benevolent you are, but it really speaks to the characters that you choose to surround yourself with. Now, I understand that, we may disagree on politics and policy, and I get that. But this is local government, and to the extent that someone has to reveal this kind of information about themselves is utterly ridiculous. We're a small community. We shouldn't have to reveal those kind of things because of disagreements. I think, ironic enough, while Trustee Herrera was talking, it always reminds me of a comment or a quote by someone that I really politically don't care for. And that is Ronald Reagan, but I will modify his quote slightly. Too often, character assassinations have been replaced debate in principle here in Ossining. Destroy someone's reputation, you don't have to talk about what he stands for. I don't say that to say that the two things that were mentioned by Herrera are anything to be ashamed of, but the fact that if this is the dossier, this is the information that people gathered to destroy his political career. It speaks to really the depth that that people would go through to keep power, have power over. I wanted to say that to my friend who I've known since the 7th grade. Me and him share many similarities with the way we were raised and the communities we were raised in. I want that to be said and not to at least be acknowledged.
Thanks.
Any other announcements?
Thank you. It's actually September 29. Uh, having Marcus Square going to be second festival, Hispanic festival happening here in the village of Ossining. And it started last year, obviously, with called Padres Hispanos. And what they do is they actually gather all the Latinos, Spanish businesses around Ossining, parts of Westchester, and bring and display our culture and share our type of food of different countries to our community. It's a really awesome festival, so I invite all the community members here in the village of Ossining to participate and just stop by and actually see the typical dances. They're really an interesting festival that actually happening Sunday, September 29 between 12 and other announcement that I have, I think I'm going to leave it to the chair, landlord tenants. Add to him, to all of us here, in form. So those two announcements.
We'll hear that during organizational announcements then?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, I do have quite a few announcements, and then I will obviously respond to the accusations that have been levied against me. Of course.
Just looking at my text, I was looking at the dates. I just wanted to say that, you know, we've had a very long-standing Jewish community in Ossining, over 125 years of age. So I do want to wish those who do celebrate, what's happening? Oh, okay. Those that do celebrate the Rosh Hashanah, which will be on the 29th. For that reminder, I wish them a very happy and reflective New Year.
Our village town clerk, Marianne Roberts, has asked me to share information with folks about early voting. You may be aware that New York State has changed the voting regulations, and there will be early voting beginning on October 26th. That is the Saturday and Sunday of that first weekend of early voting, the 26th and 27th, will be from 11:30 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. That will be happening for 2 weekends in a row, and during the week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, it's from 7:30 in the morning till 4:30 in the afternoon, and Tuesday and Thursday, it's later hours. It's 11:30 in the morning until 8:30 in the evening. And then the day before the election, that Monday, November 4th, there will be no early voting, and then election day, you go to your regular polling place on that Tuesday the 5th. Now, what I didn't tell you, and neglected to tell you, is where this is happening. Ossining is very fortunate to have been selected as one of the polling places at our community center. So, if you're ready to vote, Saturday, October 26th, go right down to the community center. It opens at 11:30 in the morning. It's obviously the first time this is happening, so they're still figuring some things out. As of a couple of nights ago, the machines that had been ordered had not yet arrived. It is possible that you will be able to vote in any of the 17 early voting locations in Westchester County, regardless of where you are registered to vote in Westchester County, but they cannot confirm that until the machines come in and make sure that the on-demand ballots are going to work as expected. But if you're an Ossining voter, you can definitely vote at the community center during early voting on any of those 9 days of early voting, which begins Saturday, October 26th and continues through Sunday, November 3rd. For more information, you can go to the Westchester Board of Elections website or contact the village town clerk. Also, Marianne requested that I share information with folks. If you would like to attend the Ossining Historical Society 88th Anniversary Dinner and Silent Auction, it is happening Thursday, October 24th at 6 p.m. It will be held this year at the Briarcliff Manor. And you must make your reservation and pay in advance. They will not be accepting checks at the door. So please RSVP by October 14th. You can call the Sing Sing Historical Society Museum, and they have a great phone number, 914-941-0001. Okay, this week there are a couple of different organizations that are hosting programs related to the experience of families with incarcerated individuals. The first is the documentary discussion series, which our program this month is happening tomorrow Thursday, the 19th of September. As always, it is free to the public at 6:30 p.m. The program begins at the Ossining Public Library. The film is Trey Mason Desson, or Dasan, I imagine. Those are the names of the three boys that are the subjects of the film. They are children of incarcerated individuals, and the documentary follows them and tells their story. Immediately following the film, we'll have a panel discussion. I'm very excited about the panelists. It includes a married couple who have experienced marriage and parenthood during the husband's incarceration. And you may have seen the gentleman, Lawrence Bartley. Both of them are very fierce advocates for families of incarcerated individuals. He works with the Marshall Project as a director of News Inside, and he was included in the recent MSNBC town hall meeting that Lester Holt hosted right here at Sing Sing, at the Sing Sing prison. And we also have Claire Hurst, who is the director of Navigating Fatherhood Program, Community Credible Messenger Initiative. She works with fathers who are incarcerated, as well as adolescents who have been in the criminal justice system, largely through a mentoring program. It's going to be a really powerful film and panel discussion. Please join us tomorrow evening at the Ossining Public Library for that program. That program has a screening sponsor this month, which is the Sing Sing Prison Museum. And the Sing Sing Prison Museum Project is hosting a really, really engaging, exciting dance program at the waterfront. It's called The Weight Room. It's an acrobatic dance performance. There will be 4 performances this weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. To learn more about the program and to purchase tickets, there's a suggested donation of $25 a ticket, although families who are prison impacted are invited to join for free. You can visit the singsingprisonmuseum.org to get more information and to get your tickets from Eventbrite. It's Friday evening, I think 2 performances on Saturday and then 1 on Sunday afternoon. And it honors the experience of women with loved ones who are incarcerated. So it's helping our community, and I say community very broadly, to have really thoughtful conversations about the impact of the criminal justice system.
I'm sorry, Mayor, where's that taking place?
That is down at the waterfront at Lewis Engel Park. In fact, if you go down there now, you can see that the stage has been created. It's actually a moving set that the dancers will be suspended from. It's acrobatic dance. It's pretty fascinating. And the choreographer herself has done these sorts of dance performances in the past for other issues related to social justice. And she herself is impacted by prison, impacting her family. I will also give a shout out to Green Ossinings. Community-wide tag sale is coming up on Saturday, October 5th. You can learn more about that at greenossining.org, and you'll see a image like this. Click on it, and you can find out all the locations throughout our community as the date approaches where the community tag sale is happening. So various people who live in the greater Ossining area have signed up to have a tag sale at their home, and you can find out all the different addresses, and you can just drive all over Ossining going to tag sales on the 5th of October. Okay, so I want to say to Trustee Herrera, I really hope that your statement tonight is inspirational to some people who may be struggling either with their own identity or with being public about their own identity. There's great value in people gay people being out and being public about who they are, and that can be very helpful to others. And with you being an openly gay elected official at Ossining, you join a legacy of openly gay people who have been in elected office in Ossining. Obviously, some of us served with Bill Hanauer. He was been way up to like 2005, I think he started as a trustee, and then had 4 terms as mayor. And then actually Janice Castaldi was his deputy mayor for a little while, and she was an openly gay woman. So we have a community that is very supportive, and I hope that that is the response that you get from folks. I anticipate that it would be. And with that in mind, I can't understand where the rest of your statement is coming from. We had a tough, heated campaign against each other that lasted a year. During that time, I don't recall ever saying anything that was degrading or insulting to your character. The vague accusations about people in power and positions, powerful positions in government, that have threatened you about anything, really casts a shadow on my integrity. I assume it's me. If it's not me, then please be clear about who these allegations are against. And I have no idea what's in the dossier that was referenced in a public meeting. I have no idea. I believe what was said was that I was told that there was information, and I said, I don't want anything to do with it. It has no place in this campaign. So if you felt threatened, I'm sorry you felt threatened, but it was in no way by anything, should not have been as a result of anything that I ever said or did. And I would ask that you please not impugn my intent.
So, what I said is, at least on my end, not really open for discussion, as to the times I felt and or was directly or indirectly threatened. The particular comments that I made about those particular incidences did not come from you, Mary Garrity. Okay, just so
The public heard that you're not suggesting that I in any way threatened you or suggested
no,
that.
I just said that this actually is not about you. Believe it or not, it's about me.
I understand why the public would imagine, since I was your opponent for a year, that you were.
Now, if you were part of the culture, that could be a different discussion. But you know, this is really about making sure that no one thinks they have leverage over anyone for any alleged problem or reason. But as I read my statement and crafted it very carefully, I did not say it was you because it wasn't. Clearly, you took it very different than most people would, especially if it's not about you. But that's your prerogative. You know, but at this point, you know, that's really all I have to say.
Well, I guess when the meeting is over, we'll hear if anyone in the public would think it was a rational conclusion to come to, that people in positions of power were threatening you.
Well, no, and I clarified, and I said it wasn't you, so now other people of power appointed and elected could ask the same question, and I'll also be more than happy to answer that.
I don't think we need to continue this conversation any further.
You brought it up, so.
Madam Clerk.
Moving on to administrative reports from Corporation Counsel Stuart Kahan.
Thank you, Martha. Good evening, Mayor, members of the board. We'll call this a potpourri tonight with regard to administrative reports. The manager is not here, but I did want to bring the board up to date on a few things. The board is familiar with the toilet replacement program that we are doing through the New York City Department of Environmental Protection. That's a 4-year program. I think we have about 3 years to run. It involved 500 replacement toilets that were available. To date, just 65 have been replaced, so that's 13%. The city has requested that the village, to the extent that it is able, step up the program. Now, as the board may recall, the program is for residential properties that are owned, so it does not include any of our multifamilies. One of the suggestions, however, that has been made by Andy Teese and Christina Cumming from the Water Department is that under the current system, it's 1 toilet replacement per household. We have had a number of individuals, both within the town outside that is covered, as well as within the village, who have said, well, I have 3 bathrooms in my house. Why can't I get 3 replacement toilets? We have, in fact, kept a list of those folks who have done that. And it is the suggestion from the Water Department that the program be expanded so that basically if you have more than 1 legal bathroom in your home, you should be allowed to get basically more than one replacement toilet for your home. If the board is inclined to think that that's a reasonable change in policy, we'll present that to the DEP to make sure that they're okay with it. They did not seem to have any objection to it. I did inquire as to whether in an owner-occupied property, as to the other units in that property that are not occupied by the owner, the city's plan is just dealing with owner-occupied. So again, if that owner has more than one toilet within their dwelling, the thought is to allow them to, in fact, apply for more than one replacement. Again, we're more than a year, approximately a year, I guess, into the program. We have included the town, the unincorporated portion of the town, but we're only at 13%. So the thought is that if we could make it available to homeowners for all the bathrooms in their house, that would be that would probably increase the village's numbers. So you know, I would hope that the board would you know, think that that's reasonable, and again, then we would present it to the DEP to make sure that they're okay with that, so that we can increase those numbers. And I did wanted to present that. The other thing I wanted to mention to the board is that there is a water main which is located underneath the Secor Road bridge that goes to Westerly Road. And there is, in fact, a leak in that water main. It is now a drip, but it's gotten actually somewhat more significant. Water Superintendent Andy Teese yesterday met with representatives from the MTA and also from company ELQ, which is the county's emergency contractor. It is an 8-inch water main. It is 40 years old. It needs to be replaced. And from all appearances, it is the village's responsibility for that particular water main. I mention this because Andy wanted me to discuss it with the board to let you folks know that we have at least asked ELQ to start the paperwork process, which is a fairly lengthy process, because again, since this does involve Metro North, it will involve shutting down of the tracks for certain periods of time. The work would be done at night. It is anticipated it would be done over a 5-day period with 1 day to investigate and with 4 days to actually do the repair. We don't have a cost yet, but what Andy has advised is we would piggyback onto the county's emergency repair contract. The hope is that the work could start sometime in October. ELQ is very familiar with this type of work and has done work with the county in the past and has done work with Metro North. So they're familiar with their flagging requirements, with their shutoff requirements. So that's just something I wanted to, you know, apprise the board of as to what the situation is. This is down at that particular water main down, again, underneath the bridge that leads to Westerly. One other thing I just wanted to discuss with the board and with the public relates to the issue of overgrowth, excessive grass growth, weeds, things like that. What people will now be receiving if they in fact have a situation like that on their property and it's brought to the attention of the building department is a notice of violation. It will be a 1-page notice that will generally be mailed to the residents or to the person who is in charge of the property, advising that individual or entity that they have 10 days to basically clean up the situation. If the situation is not cleaned up within 10 days, the village manager under the code can then request through the Department of Public Works or her designee that the village undertake that work. If that work is undertaken by the village or a contractor retained by the village, an invoice will be prepared. That invoice will be then sent to the property owner, who will have 20 days to pay the invoice. And if that invoice is not paid, it will then go on to the tax bill. Therefore, that individual will then see an increase in their tax bill in order to satisfy the invoice from the contractor or from the village directly, which is also part of the village code. I mention this because We do get many complaints. The building department does get many complaints about overgrowth, grass too high, weeds too high. And in 2017, the village code was revised to remind property owners that they are responsible to the curb line, not just to their sidewalk. So that if you do get a violation of this, it would be in your best interest to have it taken care of, because if you don't, you may not pay now, but you will pay on your tax bill. And it's important to note that interest on tax bills is much higher than on virtually any other, type of interest that can be obtained, by a municipality. So it's just to note that that's what will be the process that will be going forward with regard to brush, grass, and weeds. I realize that we're towards the end of the summer, but we still get those complaints, and they continue to come in. So if you get a notice of violation, it's in the interest of the property owner or the person in charge of the property to take care of that promptly, because again, unlike orders to remedy that deal with building code violations, this violation has just a 10-day remedy period. And if it's not done, then action can be taken by the village. Thank you.
Please.
Sorry, thank you, Stuart, for the total replacement information. I just had a quick question because I'm looking at the brochure that we have in our website,
Yes.
and it says your property is a single or two-family house, condo, co-op, or owner-occupied. So my understanding was that you are owner-occupied. You are allowed to replace toilet for each unit.
No, it's only the unit that you are occupying.
Got it.
So if
Okay.
you have a three-family and you live in one,
One.
the other two units are not covered by this because they're considered rental.
Got it. Okay, I understand.
Police Chief Kevin Sylvester.
Good evening. So last time we met, we had announced some events that were coming up. Proud to report that the Austin Police Department defeated the fire department in softball, 24-4. We think we lost count of the score after a while, but all for good cause. More importantly, though, as a fundraiser, that was to raise money to support the employees of the Landmark Diner, who many have been at least employment displaced since that fire demolished the building down there. Proud to announce that we raised just about $1,100 for those folks. So. That'll be turned over to them shortly. We have one last promise of a donation that we're waiting to come in, and we're confident that that's coming. Today, you may see our department on the news as part of the Westchester District Attorney's School Safety Commission. Today, they published their report, which is comprised of a number of recommendations for school districts to follow, specifically aimed at preventing gun violence in our schools. Proud to say that our department was selected as a participant in this because of our relationship with our school district, and that we're sort of an example district for across Westchester County and how we work with our schools between law enforcement and the schools. So we are doing most of the things that were recommended already, but I'm looking forward to working with the superintendent to try and implement all of the recommendations that were there. You may have seen on Facebook today that we had made an announcement about a traffic collision that happened earlier today. At 8:30 this morning, we received a report of a youth struck by a vehicle at the intersection of Croton Avenue and Linden Avenue. Reports that we received are that the driver had initially stopped, had actually gotten out of the car and spoke with that person, and then left the scene. We did put information out asking for anybody that knows anything to call the police department, and I'm relieved to announce that that driver has called in and is cooperating with us now. That pedestrian suffered minor injuries, was transported to a hospital because of age, but appears to be in good health. Our GED program, or Putnam Northern Westchester BOCES GED program, is continuing. Just a reminder to anybody who may need a high school equivalency diploma that that program is available, the task program, Mondays and Fridays from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. at the Ossining Public Library. This Sunday, we're going to have a child safety seat installation day and our touch truck event, which is going to take place right here in the parking lot outside the police station, and that is going to go Sunday from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. If you have a child in a car seat, the Governor's Traffic Safety Council estimates that up to 70% of motorists are driving around with seats that are either improper for your child or improperly installed. There is no penalty for coming here and asking for help. So if you are unsure if your seat is installed or you know you have a bad seat, come see us. We have some resources that if people have a child that does not have a seat, we may be able to help with that. If you have a seat and it's an appropriate seat, we should have some resources to help with that too. Those resources may be limited, but we're going to do everything we can to make sure that every child is in an appropriate safety seat in order to be protected. And our last thing is that Trustee Herrera had asked that I had published last week to the board my 2018 annual report of the Civilian Police Complaint Review Board activity, and it is as follows. In 2018, we received a total of 13 complaints. Those complaints were for the following reasons: 1 for inappropriate use of force, 1 for an unlawful search. 1 officer was accused of having planted a drug on a defendant's person. 1 was for harassment, 1 for retaliatory testimony, and 3 were for rudeness. Number of officers that were named: there were 4 officers named once, 2 officers were named twice, and these do not include complaints that are pending or otherwise reviewable, which I'll mention in just a moment. The dispositions on those cases are: 1 was substantiated. That was for an officer being rude. That officer had been counseled and has been subject to increased monitoring by supervisors. 3 complaints were unsubstantiated. 4 were unfounded. 3 complaints are still pending due to ongoing criminal cases or civil litigation. We cannot have the Civilian Complaint Review Board cannot hear those based on the code until those criminal and civil cases have been completed. And 2 cases were unreviewable. That's all for tonight. Thank you.
I'd just like to follow up. Thank you for updating folks on the accident that happened on Croton Avenue. Obviously, that's a state road, and it's one of the very frustrating things about having state roads in the village is we have limited ability to influence traffic flow and signage. But we are planning to meet with, or scheduling to meet with, the DOT, and I just confirmed with the manager. She's not here today because she's at a conference in Saratoga with other elected officials and managers, so we're happy to have her there. But once we have that meeting, we'll report back to folks. And from a traffic function perspective, the hub of our challenge is the intersection of Route 9 and Route 133, but information about accidents that occur on state roads are obviously important to be raising when we have that meeting. And so we'll report back to folks on how we're progressing with the DOT paying attention to our requests.
If I could just add one thing,
Please.
At our last meeting, I had mentioned that we had met with the Governor's Traffic Safety Council. They came here to meet with us to go over some things that we can do to improve traffic safety around here, and some of the things that you'll see rolling out soon. They're supposed to be sending us materials, and they're going to have people coming back to meet with us again. They're going to be offering us increased grant funding to do things like education, because some of the things that we see we understand that people generally know the rules of the road and they choose not to follow them. But one of our challenges is also with pedestrians who are crossing the wrong places. And we actually think we can make some headway in terms of traffic safety with making sure that everybody understands. People know to cross at the corner, but some people don't really realize why and how important that is. So there's going to be some pedestrian safety education stuff that we're going to be afforded by the state. Also some grant money for enforcement and potentially some signage and things like that we can put around. So we're looking forward to looking at this both from an education perspective, an enforcement perspective, and my challenge to the department is that they have to take ownership of these streets, and every police officer on the road. I will be on patrol tomorrow. I know from time to time I like to put on Twitter when I'm going out and doing traffic safety. This is something that we cannot tolerate, particularly when it impacts our students on the way to school. And Croton Avenue is a heavily traveled road at that hour. Students walking to Roosevelt, other students coming down Croton Avenue going to the high school. So we've been saying for a number of weeks that people are warned that our officers are out, they're doing traffic enforcement. We try to offer warnings when we can, but there's only so much we can do to ask people to drive properly. Tickets are coming.
Thank you.
Moving on to organization announcements. Is there anyone here who would like to make an organization announcement?
I would. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
And thank you all for your service. My name is Steve Dewey from the Ossining Landlord-Tenant Relations Council. I'd like to announce that we're going to have our first public forum since we've been revitalized and reorganized since last year. And that'll be held on October 29th, last Tuesday in October, at 7 p.m. at the Ossining Public Library at the Boudars Theater, big theater downstairs. Purpose for this is to introduce ourselves as well to the public. Many people don't know who we are. If you're a landlord, a tenant, or even the neighbor to a premises of such, and you have an issue, you can contact us by using the website, and we'll introduce the website and show you those things. As well as we're going to introduce big changes for a lot of landlords and tenants who do not realize, effective June of this year, many changes in the landlord-tenant law. We're going to present a lot of those issues that affect us here locally. We'll discuss those issues, but very important for landlords and tenants to hear about this. We'd like to see a nice turnout and a great question and answer period for anybody that has issues on that. So we look forward to seeing you Tuesday, October 29th at 7 p.m. in the library.
Perfect.
Very
Thank you
much.
so much.
Steve? Steve? Hi.
Sir. Sorry.
That's great. Who is the council speaking or working with to get the proper information to be able to then do a presentation to Ossining tenants and landlords?
Two things. One is that we're using not only the law. I've been making actually presentations as an attorney with the judges in Yonkers, judges throughout the area, and many what we call CLEs, or continuing legal education that I myself, Stuart, and other attorneys, Kevin, have to attend every year. We've actually been presenting this from all different landlords and different attorneys on our view of the law. A major bulk of this 70-something pages in this affects New York City rental, public housing down there. There are 3 pages alone to just mobile home parks in upstate New York. Apparently there's an issue there. But the basics are a lot of procedural procedures that we see here in the court that I've actually affected with already in my daily practice. So I take that from my experience, and I'll be presenting that part of the issue as far as procedures, what has to happen. And from what I see from the Landlord-Tenant Council, still one of our biggest pet peeves is one of mine, as well as our biggest complaint last year, and right now our leading complaint this year, is the return of a security deposit. I don't understand why landlords don't get this. That is tenants' money. We're going to review that at this meeting on the 29th, and that should be returned to the tenant appropriately. Parties decide that it should be used elsewhere for some reason, then they have to decide on that. But the law, New York State said enough of this, and they've actually codified it into law about returning that. So that's going to be one of our focuses there. But basically the answer to your question is, from what I have in practice, what we've garnered, all these different judges from the OCA, Office of Court Administration, to what they're practicing now and have instructed the courts here in Ossining to proceed with, that we've honed it down to a bunch of slides that will really affect our tenants and landlords in this area. We don't need to discuss New York City. We don't need to discuss upstate New York. But what will affect our tenants and landlords here? And that's what we'll focus on. And certainly I can address any questions. I've invited Assemblywoman Galis to join us. She was obviously one of the persons that helped to pass those laws.
She actually did not.
Well, she was up there during the.
Yeah, she voted against all of them.
Pardon me?
She voted against all of them.
Right, and we discussed that. We discussed that with many of the other assembly persons prior to the vote. But I invited her to come to help explain if the public has questions as to her. But that's where that's coming from.
Okay.
The laws seem to be pretty straightforward. Nothing drastic, nothing new. But I think that to help the public, I'd like to see landlords especially and tenants come on out so that they know what their rights are, as well as their responsibilities of everyone in that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I just have your flyer, please? Did you
Sorry?
put it your flyer that you have
Oh,
to
the
put
flyer?
it into put
Look
it
at
into
that.
the minutes?
Thank you to our Vice Chair, Julie Johnson, making the flyer. We're going to try and pass these out. Again, try and get the message out on 29th October, 7 p.m., Ossining Library. See you there. Great.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
Anybody else? Okay. Moving on to village board resolutions. Is there anyone here who wishes to address the board on any of the resolutions this evening? Okay, so approval of minutes, September 4th, 2019. Resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Ossining hereby approves the minutes of the September 4th, 2019 regular meeting as presented. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Comments on the board? Madam Clerk?
All in favor?
Aye.
Abstain.
Okay. Approval of minutes, September 11th, 2019. Resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Ossining hereby approves the minutes of the September 11th, 2019 special session as presented. Do I have a motion?
Second.
Comments on the board? Madam Clerk?
All in favor?
Aye.
Approval of the voucher detail, September 18th, 2019. Resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Ossining hereby approves the voucher detail report dated September 18th, 2019, and the amount of $697,156.33. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Comments on the board? Madam Clerk?
All in favor?
Aye.
Resolution authorizing the village manager to sign the agreement with the County of Westchester for prisoner transportation. Resolved that upon review by the Corporation Council, the village manager is authorized to sign the agreement with the County of Westchester for the transportation of prisoners, which agreement is for the period of January 1st, 2019 through December 31st, 2020. Do I have a motion?
So move.
Second.
Comments on the board? We discussed this last week. It's a pretty standard agreement that is being undertaken throughout the county with many
Correct.
communities that are in this position. Madam Clerk?
All in favor?
Nay.
Resolution declaring certain village-owned vehicles as surplus. Resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Austin hereby declares the following vehicles as surplus equipment and authorizes their disposal in accordance with New York State law by sale or otherwise as is. For 2012 Chevrolet, the 2008 Ford, 2015 Ford, 2003 Ford, 2016 Ford, 2018 Ford, and 2010 Ford. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Didn't this list get like,
Grew.
yeah, it grew like
I
by
thought it was-
400% here. What happened?
There were originally 2 police vehicles.
Right.
Right.
And then I was requested by DPW to add some additional vehicles. And that's why it's here.
So we have 2016, 18.
The 2012 Chevrolet and the 2016 Ford Interceptor,
those were the
those are 2,
police.
that's vehicles 103 and 105.
I believe so by
Yeah,
date.
no,
it's
they
hard
are.
for me to
I can
remember.
tell you that.
Yeah, the Caprice
Which is what we discussed
I recall.
at the
Yes.
work session. The others were provided, as I said, by DPW as surplus.
2008, that makes a lot of sense. 2018, I'm a little more disappointed that's surplus now. Obviously, something happened. I mean, it's just that's why we have these in the work session, so we can ask questions in the work session and have explained why we have a 1-year-old car that's totaled. I assume someone had an accident I was not aware of. Hope they're okay.
That one I'm not aware of. If the board wants to delete that one and I can put it on for another and have it at the work session next week for an explanation, I'm more than happy to do that. Again,
I mean, I think that the way when we buy a vehicle, its useful life is considered 3 years, right? So there's, I mean, we don't even bond for it. It's a ban usually because it's just 3 years. Am I wrong about that? Tom's not here for me to ask. That's really a Tom question.
that would be a Tom
So a
question.
1-year-old car is certainly not exhausted its useful life. So I don't know. I don't think we have it's going to end up being voted into surplus. Obviously, nobody gets rid of a car unless they have to. I just, that's why we discussed this in work session, so we
Understood.
can
Well,
have it explained.
which is why I'm as I said, I received this yesterday. I put it on my era. I'm more than happy to put that one off, and that can be discussed next week and voted on the first session in October for the one.
I
particular
mean, let's
car.
just, nothing's gonna happen, so let's just take it off. It's also a matter of like process. We have a question, we can't ask anybody.
So
So,
that's
yeah, I know you're not arguing or anything, so at least that one you could take off.
okay.
How do you
Will,
feel about that?
as amended, then the board can
So-
vote on
Okay.
that resolution.
All right, so as amended, we'll take off 2018 just because that's the most glaringly confusing and surprising and, not even confusing. You know what happened. Probably there's an accident. But if we could take that off for now and get some clarification next week.
Absolutely.
And next week, I'd like to hear about all of these vehicles. I'm not so worried about the 2003. I'm a little more curious about the later models.
We'll have that information.
Thank you, sir.
Sure.
So we still have to vote as amended now.
Okay, voted as amended. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, resolution authorizing the village manager to sign the municipal snow and ice agreement with the state of New York. Resolved that upon review by the Corporation Council, the Village of Austin Board of Trustees authorizes the village manager to sign contract number D014843 municipal snow and ice agreement with the state of New York for a term of July 1st, 2019 through June 30th, 2024, and it is further resolved that the state of New York reserves the right to review and revise the village's calculations contained in contract D014843. Do I have a motion?
So move.
Comments on the board? Madam Clerk?
All in favor?
Aye.
The Fire Department Appointment Monitor Hose Company Number 4 resolved that upon the recommendation of the Fire Chief, Uriel Bersedia, Austining, New York, was elected as an active member of Monitor House Company Number 4 for interior firefighting. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Comments on the board? Madam Clerk?
All in favor?
Aye.
Fire Department Monitor House Company Number 4 removed from active roles. Resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Austining hereby removes Glenn Miller from the active roles of the Austining Fire Department Monitor Hose Company Number 4. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Comments on the board? Madam Clerk?
All those in favor? Resolution adopting the 5-year plan for the Village of Austining's Public Housing Agency. Whereas on September 18th, 2019 at 7:30 p.m. at the Birdsall Fagan Police Court Facility 86-88 Spring Street, the Village of Austining Board of Trustees held a public hearing to receive public comments on the Housing Choice Voucher Program Section 8 5-year plan effective January 1st, 2020. And whereas prior to the public hearing, notice of the public hearing was published in the Gazette on August 15th, 2019, which publication was preceded on July 25, 2019, with publication in the Gazette that the 5-year plan would be available for review effective July 25, 2019 at 16 Croton Avenue, the Austining Public Library, and the Community Center. And whereas the public hearing was closed on September 18, 2019, now therefore be it resolved that the Village of Austining Board of Trustees adopts the 5-year plan effective January 1st, 2020 through December 31st, 2024, and directs that all necessary documents be filed, including this resolution acknowledging the adoption of the 5-year plan. Do I have a motion?
Second.
All right, we should probably discuss this in light of the comments from Trustee Bazemore earlier after the public hearing was closed. Right, before we vote on this? I mean, there were questions that were raised, because it sounds like you were suggesting that the 5-year plan you'd like to have for more information included in it based on the data that you imagine that they probably have. I'm not familiar enough with other 5-year plans. My understanding of what this was is that it was kind of a pro forma process that they have to go through that HUD requires so that we can get the funding for the Section 8 vouchers. So I don't want to hold it up, but as long as we're going to have a quorum next week and we can vote on it, I'm comfortable with waiting a week and getting some information and asking Marilyn, does she actually have access to those numbers? Is there, can you provide examples of where you've seen this kind of information in others? Because if it's something as simple as she can pull it out of a file and it might be valuable to include, and then it's part of a public document, then that would be great. If it's more complex than that and it's something that we're asking her to investigate for future years so that we can have a better understanding of what the circumstance is in Austining, then we'll just approve it as is. That's where my mindset is. What do others think? Comfortable with that?
May I request, Trustee Bazemore, since Marilyn is away this week, that you send me an email specifically indicating what it is you want her to look for,
Gotcha.
so that I can have her do that once she returns to the office. And perhaps I'll see if she's available to be here next week. If there
That'd be
are any
great.
questions to ask.
That would be great.
Okay.
Thank you.
So we'll hold this in abeyance then.
So then is there a motion to table? Is that what we do?
To do a motion to table would be good. Thank you.
Is there a motion to table item I?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Madam Clerk?
Moving along, is there continuing business of the board?
Yes, I just had a follow-up item. So a few weeks ago, I sent a email letter request to Shannon Wong of the ACLU, and it was requesting her to come into a work session to be placed on the agenda to have a presentation, particularly on police, on disentanglement when it comes to ICE, and a couple of other areas, and overall best practices. Unfortunately, it was off camera, so I kind of had to paraphrase. I know that the mayor had a conversation that I won't speak on their behalf on, but
I'll just let you know.
I'm not finished. I had to bring it up under new business, let the public know what the request was, and the request was to have someone come in. request formally came through myself and Trustee Bazemore. I had to call Shannon and I had to write an email, kind of apologizing for what the mayor told her, that we were using her as a political pawn. When in reality, we just wanted an external organization that has experience in these practices for us to learn better and really see how to move forward in our roles as trustees and police commissioners. So I'm a little, disappointed that it got tainted and that she chose to grandstand in an opportunity where we could both all learn. So at this point, what I would like to do is acknowledge that the process is that, for those that are watching, is that in a village form of government, though weak made form of government, it's still chaired and run by the mayor. So the mayor is actually the person who sets the agenda. Thus, we have to send a request to the mayor for that to be placed on it. As per NICOM, which is the advisory statutes that we follow, we don't have to follow them, but we do. Two trustees can request an item be placed on the agenda, and that's all you need. Currently, we're being obstructed, so I really don't know how to move forward with the request, regardless of whether we agree on that being discussed or having that guest at a meeting.
Are you done?
Now I'm done.
I called Ms. Wong twice today, and she's not responded to my call to invite her to attend our October 10th meeting.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
That answers that. Thank you.
Okay. Is there any new business of the board?
Apparently not.
Is there anyone here who wishes to address the board?
Good evening, everybody. Nicola Kenny, 11 Edward Street, Ossining, New York. I have 3 minor little things. I'll be well under 3 minutes. The first 2 that I brought up several months ago about trash building up on the sidewalks and around the sidewalks, and also overhanging bushes and vines and things. I want to continue this discussion beyond the signs that are wrapped around many of the village municipal trash cans. In the blocks immediately around Park School in particular, which just happens to be my neighborhood, there's a lot of broken glass and metal bottle caps and such that pose an injury risk to young children walking to and from the school. Please consider ways to encourage maybe the property owners to clean just beyond their property line, and or maybe getting DPW to give attention to excess litter before we enter into the winter months. Same thing with cutting back vines and branches that are already hanging fairly low over the sidewalks. Now, I'm taller than most people in Ossining, but they're going to become heavier in winter months also, and then be also posing a risk. And now on a completely different issue that has been before the board for the past year, the SPCA contract in Ossining Ferals. I want to encourage this board and any future occupants of your seats to maintain and perhaps increase the financial contract that the village has with the SPCA of Westchester with regard to the trap, neuter, and release program. There's been an uptick in the number of stray cats in the village that parallels the increased human population, as far as I've been noticing. The Cat Protective Council conducted a booth at the village fair and collected a lot of information on known areas across the village from concerned residents. I live directly across from Park School and recently caught a seriously ill cat that perhaps would have had problems that would have impacted a lot of my neighbors. When she was spayed at the Simpson Clinic just 3 weeks ago, there was a big brouhaha about something. I was not present, so this is secondhand information. But things were said about the number of Ossining strays that had been brought in that morning. I'm not sure the significant details, but the secondhand info was that Ossining has or will exceed the allotted number of surgery spots, which I don't know about for sure. that are in the contract. I would also suggest perhaps educational efforts geared towards residents and or their children about responsible pet ownership. Because the cat that I rescued was not feral, turned out, and was very ill, and still intact. But if you could just look into those details. Thank you.
Thank you for bringing that to our attention. Is there anyone else?
If I could, the village allots, I believe, $38,000 a year to the SPCA, and that doesn't cover the additional thousands of dollars we spend on the TNR program. What did happen is that our animal control officer is out of work for reasons that we can't discuss in the meeting right now. And there is a program in place where the locations where the cats are taken from have to be inspected. There's an approval process because we've paid for, in the past, for procedures that we couldn't even verify that the cats were here. In particular cases where our staff members are not at work and we don't have somebody else that can spend the day driving around to all of the locations, not all of those cats were approved for procedures, and when they're not approved for procedures, then funding isn't approved for that particular cat on that particular day. But that's why it's important that the folks we have to make sure we have accurate information. Some of the procedures are approved, some of them are not. It's based on what our staff is able to go out. We have to be able to go out and find and see these cats at particular times that they're there, which, needless to say, is not an easy task to do, and particularly when animal control is down right now, that makes it a little bit more challenging. So we have not run out of money. We've continued with the TNR program. It simply sometimes is not as efficient as it has been in the past because of our lack of a staff in that particular area.
Okay. Thank you for offering that insight. We'll continue the conversation following the meeting. Are there others who would like to make announcements? Okay. Then, yeah, go ahead.
Regarding the area around Park School and sidewalk issue, does the public can go online and actually put in addresses and complaints, right? As to things going on the sidewalks or not?
I believe they certainly can to the building department. I'm not as sure with the DPW.
How does the,
There's an email on each page that click on, and you can send an email that will have all that information on it. That you
okay,
can
so
send.
they could put
It
in.
just creates a page, a form to fill in. Put your name, you put your email address, your phone number, and your complaint.
I'm just going to suggest, and it doesn't solve all of your great ideas, but with your neighbors, make sure people are filling that out, because it's a documentation that then gets looked at by looking at an address and the broken glass on the sidewalk. So there's just some documentation. Not that I'm questioning what you were saying about the broken glass around the school, but if the departments have the addresses and the information, it goes into the system of then looking at them, correct? Am I giving out misinformation?
No, they look at it. I know the building department.
They look at it every day. So if it's, I would encourage you yourself, just look at all the addresses and put them all in, as and also all of your neighbors. I will say that education, both about that scenario and about maintaining sidewalks better, both public and private, meaning both our village folks and also people who live there, I think is something we need to look at. I just think people don't know sometimes. It's not obvious to everybody, so I appreciate the input.
Okay.
Can I have a motion to adjourn the legislative session?
No exec, right?
There's no exec tonight.
Oh, wow. We're all in shock before 9 o'clock.
Quick.
Yes. So second.
All in favor? Aye.
Unbelievable.
Thank you very much for joining us. We'll see you next week at our work session at 16 Croton Avenue at its usual time, 7:30. This meeting is adjourned.